I was born in Mildura, but I grew up in lots of different places. My tribe is Wamba Wamba, Walker Walker, up near Swanell, bordering Wiradjuri and Yorta Yorta. My dad was a shearer, so he moved around quite a bit. When it was in the season, he was making good money, but when the strikes happened, it all fell to pieces. We'd be eating Wheat Bix for meals every day. Wheat Bix and jam for breakfast, Wheat Bix and peanut butter for lunch, and Wheat Bix and Vegemite for tea. So Mum and Dad finally realised they couldn't afford to keep me, so I was sent off to live with my great-grandmother on the mission. My dad was like a weekend dad, but there was always a drink, and he was jealous of my mum, so he was quite violent with us both. Any lesson he ever gave me, he gave me by the fist. He'd hit first and then talk. One time he said to me, "What do you want to be, boy? You want to be black or you want to be white?" I said, "I want to be like you, Dad. I want to be black." So he punched me in the mouth and he's gone, "If you want to be black, that's fine. If you want to be white, that's fine. But remember, you've got a bit of both in you." He was a hard man back then, and his opinion stayed the same today. So I lived up in Mildura until I was 12. And then I told my old man what he could do with his family. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I jumped in the luggage compartment of the old Red Rattler, which was going to Melbourne, and I got off at Ballarat and hooked up with my cousins. I had family bases right through from Mildura to Melbourne, and having been shipped around a bit when I was young, I had lots of places I could stay. Aboriginal families are pretty good like that, so you've always got some auntie or uncles you can go to and live with. My uncles were some of the best people you could come across, but they were boxers and drinkers and womanisers and bad crims. So I got brought up knowing quite a bit about the law. My dad didn't care. He didn't try to stop me. He said, "If you leave now, don't bother coming back." My mum worried about me, but she didn't have much of a say. And you see, when I left, I gave my old man the right royal "fuck you" and belted him for the first time, so I wasn't going back. Even though I got shipped around quite a bit, I still made sure I kept myself in school. Staying in school was essential for me, and I wasn't the best student, but I did always attend. When I was young in Mildura, the kids used to call me Bunga and Abbo, so I reckon I used to get into fights every day. Before school I'd fight, recess I'd fight, lunch I'd fight, after school I'd fight. So it was at least 4 different punch-ons a day for me. That kind of taunting, well, it hurts, and it stays with you, and your confidence starts to suffer. One of my uncles helped me apply for a scholarship to go to a school in Ballarat, and I actually won. So I got sent to boarding school. I didn't fight much in boarding school. By then I was pretty old head on young shoulders. I knew what I had to do to get ahead, and I didn't want to hinder that. They didn't know I was Aboriginal, what with me blue-green eyes and fair skin, but once they found out, and that didn't take long, they made it hard for me. All the other kids had heaps of money, so I used to run a slide grog unit and a stolen bike racket from underneath the school. I started up a still in these old tunnels under the school that had been dug during the war, when Australia thought the Germans were going to invade. I stole all the equipment from their chemistry lab and set up the old moonshine. I was putting anything into it I could get from the kitchens. Old potato peelings, oranges, any old scraps. It was as rough as guts. You'd probably be better off drinking mouthwash. It was pretty full on, but it did the trick. That's how I got my pocket money. That and playing a bit of footy with a club down in Melbourne. The teachers found out about the grog and the bikes, but there were 15 of us involved, so expelling us all would have meant they'd lose a lot of money. So they suspended us for a while and then let us back in again. I remember I was in year 11 and the principal said to me, "All right, Trent, what do you want to do after year 12? You got 5 minutes to tell me." 5 minutes? And me with no guidance or help in my life, whilst all the other students were given a decent amount of time to talk and think through their future with staff and their parents. "I can't tell you what I want to do with the rest of my life in 5 minutes, was my reply, so I left. But taking that year off was the best thing I ever did. I did heaps of jobs, from working in insurance through to flipping burgers, but that year taught me what it meant not to follow through on your education and what it might mean for my future and chances that would go missing for me if I didn't finish my year 12. So I went back and finished off year 12. My old man, for some strange reason, gave me the money to go back. I'd always wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was going to be the first Aboriginal jet fighter pilot for the RAAF. I passed the entrance exam to get in, but I failed the medical because my dad had perforated my eardrums so many times while bashing me. I was pretty despondent about all of that, so once I finished year 12, I went back to Melbourne and partied hard. I was always a whisker's breadth of being put inside, getting pretty well known by all the coppers, but I reckon I've got some spirits above me looking after me because I never got done. Eventually I got a job in a bottle shop and worked my way up through management and got enough money together to go overseas and travel, which I did for about a year, and I came back. I bumped into a young Aboriginal fella who had a journalism cadetship. He told me about another cadetship that was coming up in 12 months' time. It was for a cameraman to work in film and telly, and I had a shitload of motivation back then, so I thought, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. So I went up to the personnel officer at the local TV studios for a month. I'd put a letter on his desk asking for 2 weeks' work experience. And he used to get so sick of me eventually, he just said, okay, Trent, just fuck off and do it. After those 2 weeks, I'd changed the format of the letter, asking for permanent work experience without pay. It took me about 2.5 months of doing this every day, but eventually, again, he gave in. So when that cadetship for the cameraman came up, I was a shoo-in. So then I was off to Sydney and away I went. I worked on all sorts of shows, anything that was going, kids shows through to dramas, current affairs, you name it. I probably worked on it. It was one of the best moves I'd made, but there was a lot of drugs in the industry. We used to work for 16-hour days. Well, you just can't do it every day. You'd be a basket case. So when you got to work, someone would say, hey, Trent, there's something for you around the back of the lighting van. And there'd be a line of coke or speed or something waiting for you to help you get through the day. So I got a real good introduction to drugs and the flamboyant lifestyle because I was making lots of money. I had a great place to live, a nice woman in my life, and things were good. My most memorable gig was when we went to film the Dalai Lama, and I actually got to meet him. Walking into that room, it was like it was filled with calmness and serenity, and what he said really got into my head about patience and happiness within yourself. That was something I thought I'd really like to have more in my life. But eventually I got jack of working for the boss and went freelance, and I did all right. I was pretty much still into the drugs, but that comes with the territory when you work in the film industry.